Firedex are getting a little bit weird. Some have Victini and Mew, some have Victini, some have Mew, some don't really have either. It's a very weird kind of archetype around at the moment, but Mike, for his part, it's Rapid Strike Urshifu, and it's very similar to what we've seen before. I mean, both of these players are very, very well established. Mike, there we see we've got Philadelphia Regionals finalists, we've got a couple of top 16 at Regionals, top 8 at Regionals, and, you know, Jack just sliding in like, hey, not to brag, but top 64 at Worlds.
Yeah, both these really accomplished players. Mike has been along for the ride for many, many years. He's been playing Pokemon for a long time, playing a very, very similar list to Azul, whereas Jack is making a bit of a change up with his Welder list. So let's jump into this game one and see how it's going to go down. As we've just said, you don't need Mewtwo and Mew to be able to beat the Rapid Strike matchup. Sometimes just efficient weldering is enough.
It is, but I'm putting a lot of the win from the last game onto Victini. I really do think Victini was the absolute, you know, the prime Pokemon in that particular matchup. There isn't any Victini here, so it's going to be very interesting. There's no Mewtwo and Mew, there's no Victini. It is your kind of standard, almost pre-battle styles Firebox. And one thing we do need to mention, Jack isn't playing Mew. So there is no protecting the bench. That's pretty big.
Yeah, no Mew and no Blacephalon either, so no huge bursts of damage. It's very much Cramorant, very much Reshizard, and it has a double V as the late game sort of push. So kind of an old-fashioned approach of Tempo Zard, really, where there's not even any Crystal Blown shenanigans going on. No baby Blacephalon with Fire Crystals going crazy for like 400 damage. So Mike very much knows what damage he can sit out of range of this game, as he's going to kick off with a Stellar Wish here. Both players leaning into that Jirachi.
Yeah, it's always a nice start. I mean, in terms of starters, you can't really beat Jirachi. You get that extra trainer card turn one. Turns out it's going to be a quick ball for Mike, which is generally what you're looking for. Does drop the Jirachi GX straight away turn one, but knows that Jack is not playing Mewtwo and Mew. That is one of the huge advantages you can get as a really good player when you've got an open deck list tournament like we've got here.
Yeah, that's a huge relief for Mike, to be honest, because you got to put it down if they do play Mewtwo, but then you get punished by Cramorant anyway. So it's one of those things that if Jack had played a Mewtwo just to sort of have it as a threat, it could have forced Mike to, you know, put down an extra Pokemon into play that's in range for a Cram. So I'm honestly surprised that there is no Mewtwo going on in here. It can only copy Reshiram and Charizard, and there are downsides to putting in Mewtwo because you can get, you know, response Mewtwo'd and it can get awkward at times, but it allows Mike a much easier turn one. He can go ahead and establish his Rapid Strike early, gets the energy drop down as well, and is forced to just pass here. Not the best of starts, not super explosive, but he's sitting on a decent hand size and he's got everything he needed to do on turn one.
Yeah, like we said, you want to get the free energy VMAX going on turn two, and Mike is absolutely in line for that as it stands. Now, we do see Jack playing a Pokemon Communication, having a little bit of a look there. Is going second, so that Volcanion would be a nice option to start getting some energy on the board. We do see that from Firedex a lot, although like we said, in the newer builds of Firedex we're seeing with Victini, etc., it's a lot less important than it is in these Welder Box, Blacephalon, Center Scorch kind of decks we've seen in the past. So it's an interesting one, but I mean, you've got to think you're going second. Generally speaking, Volcanion's a good option, right?
Wow, I would have loved to see a Reshizard here. Rope and look for the Reshizard is such a ridiculous win condition. It's still open for him, though. Okay, so he is going down this route. I love this. Aggressive escape rope. Get that attachment. Try and double blaze into this Urshifu. You could even have Cream on top with Scoop Up Net Zigzagoons for a crazy KO. Oh my goodness, we're getting there. It's happening. This hand is insane for Jack. He just needs that Welder. Big Stellar Wish coming in here.
Yeah, Welder would be huge. There is the Welder! Oh, this is going to be good. So I'm thinking, hey, get Volcanion, start getting the energy down. But you and Jack are thinking, you know what? I can KO that Urshifu.
Let's go in. There we go. He's got the switch Scoop Up Net combo. It's a turn one, 2-prize KO. The rope is crazy good here. Insane. The Reshizard is going to be taking a huge 2 prizes and wipe Mike's only threat off the board turn one. he can go ahead and play the crystal here. It's the same as just not, because you can just discard it with the hearth.
Oh,
yeah, exactly. It's
Mike's
insane.
got the sad face. Mike knows what's going on. He knows he must have the switch and the welder. There goes the welder. And now Reshiram and Charizard is going to do that thing that it can do. Hit for 200 on turn 1. Combined with the Galarian Zigzagoon is a very improbable turn 1 KO. Mike did not think that was a realistic chance, but you have been putting, since we started this broadcast, Joe, you've been going on about Escape Rope because it is a super important reprint that we've just had. And there, I think, is one of the best examples you will see of how gosh darn good it can be.
We call this deck Tempo Zard, and that is why. That was a crazy turn. Able to get 3 energies in play, gust the opponent's active, and take Zigzagoon prizes to respond. That is a crazy turn. Mike having to respond with a Marnie here. Jack had the option to Oranguru to protect cards. The only real card he would have wanted to protect would be like something like Quick Ball, I would have thought. Jack's not drawn into much, but he's still so far ahead. And the best thing about Reshiram and Charizard is if people start hitting into you, Outrage is just there. So he's fine just turn attaching for the next few turns and still will be taking prizes, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, you've used the GX attack, which means you've got the 4 energy 230. So, you know, all Jack needs to do is top deck or find his way into a boss's orders. And that's actually a KO on another Urshifu next turn, which is a little bit silly.
Yeah, his hand is, you know, even just flare striking through this 1 prize, you know that Mike is forced to VMAX at some point during this game, I would imagine, because you're not going to get the job done just with these 2 prize Pokemon. Mike is able to reestablish that Urshifu. No attachment coming in, just having to sacrifice this Jirachi here. Jack even draws into Switch now, so he can Stellar Wish for a supporter. Doesn't find one, but can Quick Ball his way out of this now. This is getting even more dicey. It could be another Boss's Orders Flare Strike play. Another Urshi could be going down this turn if everything goes to plan.
Yeah, this could work very nicely. We've got Crobat, we've got Dedenne. Either of those could draw cards. Or Oranguru if you wanted to go a slower, more consistent route. But having said that, Jack's hand is very bad. So does want to get some kind of draw going on. But, you know, do you go Crobat and a little bit of protection on your hand? Or do you go for Dedenne, which will get you more cards but lose some resources? Looks like we got Crobat. Bearing in mind, you've always got the option to Dedenne after a Crobat, which there's a Quick Ball in hand, so it's doable.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see you going for the dream. I'm surprised we didn't see the Scoop Up Net before the Crobat, because you're almost always going to be going into Reshizard here. You have no other attacking option, to be honest. There's nothing better than the Reshizard, even if it takes the 1 prize here. He is going to reestablish, or thinking about reestablishing this Jirachi. If you're going to Dedenne Change, you might just want to go ahead and leave that other board space open for a potential, like, Dubwool play or something else. We haven't seen the Mewtwo come down, though. Going to put a Welder to the top. And we are just going to see the Flare Strike here. So making sure he has draw for next turn. And if he does get Marnied again, it's straight back into a Welder, which is a good option for him. Like we say, this 1 prize is still very solid. Overall, not a bad turn for Jack. It wasn't the big push we were hoping to see, but it's still enough right now.
Yeah, and you have 3 prizes to 0 at this stage, so you really don't need, you know... I'm a fan of the big push. It's really exciting to watch it on stream, but sometimes taking a prize, going up, and we do see the Marnie coming down, but because of that Mewtwo, we know Jack is going to be top-decking a Welder, so as long as there is at least 1 Fire Energy, which there isn't at the moment, Jack will be able to use that Welder to start getting rolling next turn.
Mike's finally found himself with an energy drop. He can start hitting into this Reshiram and Charizard if he wants to, getting to work on it. We are going to see the communication to establish that VMAX. So he could be Gale Thrusting for 150 damage. The Dojo not able to work on special energies, so going to be settling for 150 right now and hoping that this VMAX can go the distance because there's still not much else going for him.
No, and I mean, you can even Outrage here if you're Jack, because you're doing a bunch of damage. And then, I mean, if you 2-hit KO this VMAX, you win the game. It really is as simple as that. So, Jack has not got a Fire Energy, though. Got the Welder, no Fire Energy, so could just Outrage. Remember, you can't use that big 230 attack 2 turns in a row. And it does look like that's what he's going for. Knows that Mike has to switch out and come active. No, he doesn't. I'll tell you what, because if he attaches an energy, that 120 will be enough to exactly get a KO.
Yep, so he can be going for that G-Max Rapid Flow, but the Urshifu is still super vulnerable And Jack's kind of putting him into a bit of a trap here, it seems, because he's feinted a really poor hand when really he's actually not many steps away from being pretty explosive. Mike is going to go for a boss's orders play. And thanks to this, he's going to leave the Mewtwo active and force more out of Jack by the looks of things. Yeah, he's going to take a 4-prize KO, going to put himself 1 Gale Thrust away from win, and now Jack needs a little bit more than he needed before to take this response here. I think he was mostly just board locked. That's why he was worried about putting anything down last turn. And Mike trying to make it as awkward as possible for Jack, but there is going to be some double plays coming in.
Yeah, that was a really good turn from Mike there, making sure that Mewtwo is stuck in the active. And this is why we're seeing a lot of players in this tournament play Mew. Mew is a one of in a lot of decks. We've had gander through the deck list and seen it. It really is prevalent. And because Rapid Strike Urshifu, it's the most played deck in this tournament. Now, obviously the players didn't know that coming in, but like you say, there's unofficial online tournaments, there's chatter between groups. People knew that deck was going to be showing up. So we do see the Dedenne coming down here. And we've got Welder, we've got an Energy, we've got Fire Crystal, we've got Cherish Ball. Oh, that Oricorio is going to be nice.
Yeah, 6 draws for a switch out by the looks of things. You can Welder with the Fire Crystal, and yeah, you can dance the Ancients first. It doesn't matter. There's a Rope. That's not the switch out that you want.
No, that was a switch. It would be game.
He plays two Ropes and 4 switch.
There it is.
Wow, so Jack holding on to a sleeper hand and was able to capitalize on that with his double V. Does play the switch now and can take the Revenge Blast KO here to finish off the VMAX that Mike was able to establish.
That's why we play Double V. It's a very, very nice card, exactly for that. It is your classic one-of late-game sweeper, and it absolutely did its job beautifully there.
Yeah, I mean, typically you expect Blacephalon to be the partner for these Welder Box decks, but the double is super efficient late game, and Jack's just saying, I'm going to get Marnied all the time, I'm going to get reset stamped all the time. Why would I play a card that needs me to have like a huge combination of like 10 different things when I just have double? He does the job, usually good against the VMAXs, but when you are able to get the early hits on the VMAXs instead of the tag teams, you can just two-shot them instead. So the early tempo from that escape rope was, pole vaulting him ahead in that game, and the double was enough to close.
Absolutely. Well, the beginning of that game was absolutely huge. So let's run on over into game 2 then, see if things are going to be a little bit different. I mean, Mike's got to be thinking, look, I know that was a bad thing last game, but come on, there's no way that happens again.
Right? And it may be one of those things where Mike, now being aware of it, may end up having to, put down things like Jirachi GX just because it's a Pokemon that can get roped into instead. We saw his Quick Ball turn 1 just got rid of that Jirachi because he said, I don't need it for the matchup. But when there's rope in the equation, you sometimes have to make the suboptimal lines just to play around, the 2-of that Jack's using.
Absolutely, and I'm looking here. There is Quick Ball double scoop up there in Jack's hand, so there is the potential there for same kind of thing going on next turn if an Urshifu does hit the field. I think it's fairly unlikely, but I always quite like it when the pieces are starting off there. So we do see a Pokemon communication, and this is where you see a lot of these players. They'll have a look through their deck. They're trying to figure out which cards are in their prizes, because what you don't want to do is play towards a particular route only to find out the card you're looking for is stuck in your prizes. But it's a Jirachi because Jirachi is great at getting you extra cards, so kind of has to be done. Oh, an awkward Quick Ball here. Kind of has to be a scoop up net because we saw how good Double was in the late game, and we see how good Dedenne is in the early game, but we could see Jack's bench filling up a lot here very quickly.
Ooh, nice. Jack picks up the switch out now, so he can go for Stellar Wish plays. Double, rest in peace. You were really helpful in game 1, but not having a showing this game, it looks like. Gonna get discarded. We do find the Giant Hearth now as well. You can discard your backup Reshizard, thin a couple fires out the deck so you get your turn attachment, but also improving your odds for Stellar Wish here.
Yeah, this has turned into a really, really strong turn. That one switch out has just from the one card off the Oranguru has made all the difference. And now we see we've got the energy on the Reshizard. And again, this is big. It's all about the numbers, because now there's an energy on. Next turn, energy welder. Well, that's 230 damage, which is enough to get a KO on that Urshifu V. Sure, it's not quite as efficient as the 2 energy Victini V Max, but does the job just as well in the end.
And Jack's going to get moneyed out of a pretty solid hand into a pretty solid hand. It's always nice to get moneyed into your welders. Mike is going to go ahead and Stellar Wish here. Looks like no actions from their own Marnie. Maybe just getting the information of Wish first, because obviously he's still looking for ball search cards here. Taking his time over the decision. Does find Quick Ball, so at least he's got some options here. Maybe Dedenne GX if his hand isn't solid. If it's all good, he can go for the Urshifu here.
And Mike knows that Jack is playing Escape Rope, and he saw how great a use Jack made of it last turn, so Mike's got to be thinking, well, not only do I need to set up this Urshifu, but actually setting up Urshifu and only having Urshifu, that means if my opponent gets Welder and their attachment for the turn, bearing in mind they've already got Giant Half to get the 2 energy for the Welder, and an Escape Rope, that's a KO if I've only got that on my bench. So it's those extra steps, like we were talking about with having to get the Mew, even though you don't really want to get the Mew. Now we're saying, well, you can't just get this one Pokemon, because Welder and Boss's Orders, not happening. Welder and Escape Rope, yeah, that'll do.
Mike is going to deliberate and finally take an Urshifu, does get his early game energy drop, is going to put down that Mimikyu, and I'm pretty certain this is entirely because of Escape Rope. You can try and use it to Shadow Box out an Oricorio many turns down the line, potentially, but he's essentially just saying, let's not have that happen again. That was really nasty, game 1.
And now there's a bench space being used that you'd rather not be using, so you got an extra Pokemon out that's... Oh, and there is the Escape Rope, so actually... Yeah, that Mimikyu is huge. That just saved a KO, because Jack's got everything on the board that he needs right now to get the KO.
Yeah, I think it's going to be rinse and repeat. It's still going to be the same play. You could go for Cramorant if you really want to and just set up the Urshifu instead. That's also pretty reasonable. Not going to Wish. You definitely want to get the Wish in while you can.
Oh, yes.
A free Wish is always good. You may want to grab Backup Welder here, especially if you're going for Cramorant plays. Yeah, this tells me it's probably he's going for the Spit Shot here onto Urshifu.
Yeah, and you got to do this. Your opponent might misclick. They might click the wrong Pokemon. They probably won't. But we've all been there.
And yeah, the rope is actually going to benefit Mike. He can keep that Jirachi in the active now to Wish again. As Cramorant is coming in, grabbing a couple of cards. There is the Crystal for 1, which you really don't want to do. So you probably Wisdom back the Welder to the top of your deck. That's going to be the boss. Does he find an energy? That's much better for him. That makes his turn so much better next time. Oh, sorry, yeah, for next turn. He can then full Crystal, full Welder. So it's just going to be a Spit Shot onto the Urshifu here. Setting it up. Oh, wow. Beat Catch plays instead?
No.
He's going for Zigzagoon and Outrage now.
I like this, because I was just saying, do we know if Mike's got a good hand? Because Mike's sitting on a 1-card hand. And if it's not something like a Dedenne or a Professor's Research, etc., and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but if Mike doesn't have a good card in hand, this is kind of a game-winning play by Jack if Mike doesn't have a good card. So I like that. You're taking... You said free wishes are always good. Well, you know what's not good? No wishes.
So yeah, Mike sat on 2. Needs a lot here. You know, even in the worst case scenario, your Reshizard's just getting hit, and that's fine. It's going to be the research. It's going to throw away Zigzagoon. So Mike was sat on the supporter. We'd hope it wasn't just a top deck. And he is going to start to get re-established. Looking for that VMAX, looking to start Gale Thrusting. There is the option to start taking multiple knockouts with Gmax Rapid Flow as well. You can even set up the Reshizard with 120, and then you take like a 1 prize knockout on possibly... Jirachi or Oranguru to improve your prize map later on.
Yeah, I think this is looking very, very strong. Because at the end of the day, you've taken a cheeky prize. You're not getting KO'd this turn. There's more cheeky prizes coming. And actually, you've got a 2-energy Cramorant just kind of sitting there chilling on the bench. So at any point, you can attach for turn and get a Spit Shot off. So, you know, Mike knows I can bench a Dedenne, but if I do, I'm giving up 2 prizes. I can, these Pokemon that you would be looking forward to, if Urshifu gets hit and goes back to the bench, it's not safe. So I love having that Cramorant just sitting there being like, I'll come along later. I'll be here when you need me.
Yeah, if Mike needs to push, you can always punish that with that Cramorant, especially with Zigzagoon in the equation where you can even deal with Crobats and stuff. So, yeah, very solid from Jack to have the double threat established and denying that wish. Mike has done a few dances of his own Jirachi and is going to go ahead and quick ball out that Crobat. We see another energy drop onto Urshifu, and it's going to be a Crobat for 5 here. Looking for VMAX and switch outs by the looks of things.
You would think so. Now, I did have a cheeky gander. We saw it again. Only one scoop up net having been played by Jack up to now. That is nice. It means there are 3 left in the deck. So that Crobat really is not safe.
Yeah, that's certainly relevant. And let's see what Mike is able to piece together. It's 5 cards. You don't really want to continue to go fishing with the Dedenne GX because, as we say, it can so quickly be punished by Cramorant. So let's see how Mike can go about doing this. If he's able to piece together any attack whatsoever. Going to see a rope by the looks of things. It's a tough call for Jack because all these cards are very good.
Yeah, you want the Reshiram and Charizard to take the hit so you can start outraging. So you put Jirachi up and... Oh, now we do see Dedenne hit the board here. So this is starting to look like Cramorant, which, remember, does have a resistance to fighting. It's starting to look like Cramorant could be putting in some real work. And we saw that in the Players' Cup too. Cramorant is, it's a pretty good card in the right matchup.
When played right, Cramorant is a real weapon. And Mike's going to go ahead and establish another Urshifu. His board is now full. Is there going to be anything but a 30 damage strafe here?
I'm not seeing it.
We're whiffing everything.
There's the VMAX, but that doesn't count. You must get it into the active after it becomes a VMAX. That VMAX did not come active this turn. No. Now we see the air balloon, and if we see... okay, now we're good. Now we're going to see a KO.
Yeah, we are going to see the Gale Thrust for full whack. He also could have used Dojo there because he was behind on prize cards. Does find the way to actually get the KO here. And it's down to Jack to see where he wants to piece together his prize cards. There's an easy spit shot available. And it's also, there are some big benefits to having Cram in the active. It has a nice resistance to fighting, so it's an awkward Pokemon to deal with for Mike. Jack actually does pick up the boss's orders as well, if he wants to, but it feels like a welding play is on the cards here.
Yeah, you've got to think it is. Welder is absolutely huge. We are going to see the Welder. And it's going on to the Reshiram and Charizard. Looking to hit an energy. Didn't actually hit one, so now has to play the Fire Crystal to get the energy for Cramorant. But you're getting 2 back. It's not a bad use of it. And it does look like the Spit Shot is on board. And it's easy prizes. Bearing in mind, when you start drawing into Scoop Up Net, there's easy prizes potentially on the Crobat as well. Which means a 3rd Spit Shot or a Boss's Orders or something. Jack can potentially play the rest of this game just ignoring the Urshifu.
Yeah, if need be, that is on the table. It's always pretty efficient. Oh, nice. A nice crystal pickup for prize. Wow, what an insane 2 prize cards to pick up to help him have some more gas to get over the line here. Mike is going to be looking to get double Gmax Rapid Flow. I think that's really the path he's looking for, if possible. Because there's 5 prize cards out there for him that he needs to take. You can try and do a Rapid Flow this turn where you set up the Reshizard, potentially. Maybe you just set up Reshizard and take a 1 prize, and then you're going for... No, that's a difficult path for you. It's not easy here. You need to weave in Boss's Orders to deal with Dedenne to win in 2 turns, I think.
Do. And I'm thinking he needs to VMAX, because with Lysander's, or Boss's Orders Lysander in hand, and a switch, that Urshifu V on the bench is absolutely vulnerable. This is not going to be a KO. Oh, but a reset stamp as well. And we're clearly working on a 2-hit KO for 3 prizes. This isn't bad at all. That's nice. Nicely done.
And this sets up game for next turn, right? If he finds energy Boss's Orders, you can Gmax Rapid Flow the Reshizard that you've just hit and deal with Dedenne GX for game. So this is Mike's path. You Gale Frost once, and then you go for the Gmax Rapid next turn. Jack doesn't find any nice Welder pieces. He's just hoping that Mike's 3-card hand can't make a good enough push. You're probably just going to be forced to Flare Strike here.
Yeah. I think that's got to be the play. It's not ideal by any stretch of the imagination, and Mike has really set himself up nicely here. And this is why so many people are playing Mew. With a Mew on Jack's side of the board, then Mike's win condition play here just would not be possible. Now, that is something you... Oh, no, it's not even that great. Larger hand. I keep thinking Mike's going to win next turn. He must have, like, one prize remaining. No!
No, just the 5. I mean, that is realistically one of the best parts about the Urshifu is that you can map out those prizes without being vulnerable to reset stamp. It's a huge advantage that you have being able to pick off multiple Pokemon at once. Let's see if Mike can make that push. Attach Boss's Orders is all we need. We have only seen one Dedenne GX hit the board so far. It's going to be a Mew that comes down and a Marnie, so not sat on the dream here at all.
Can take a 4 prize turn, can't take a 5 prize turn.
Actually, he does play Great Catcher. I don't think it's been used yet. There could be an insane high roll still.
I did not even consider the Great Catcher. That would be...
Here we go. Would be wishing for it.
Oh, this would be huge. Oh, it's a scoop up there. But with a switch, could reset Jirachi and have another look for it. Oh, should have spotted that. I love Great Catcher into Dedenne. It's one of the best tricks in the format at the moment. It's one of the reasons why Crobat is so much better than Dedenne in some circumstances, because it's a Pokemon V. Great Catcher, it really has been peeking its way back in lately. It kind of fell out of favor, and now an awful lot of decks are playing it as a one-of. Now we do see the Dedenne, so... Oh, there is the Great Catcher. He had it all along.
We're pushing for energy now. He's Dede changing just to hit an energy card. That's all we need to see. Dojo comes in.
Six cards, 1 energy. There it is. There it goes. 2 energy, in fact. So G-Max Rapid Flow will KO the active Dedenne and the bench Reshiram and Charizard, taking 5 prizes in a single attack. And if you were looking at the prize counter, it did not look like Mike was doing a very good job in that game. But that is one of the huge advantages we see from that Rapid Strike Urshifu, being able to attack 2 Pokemon at once. We've seen it plenty of times in the history of the game. It is absolutely huge.
Yeah, and the efficiency of Gelfrost there as well, so good into Tag Team GX Pokemon. That 150 does such a great number for these 270 hit point Pokemon. Mike also plays Zigzagoon to play around with numbers just in case it's something like an ADP and alike. But yeah, when there's no Mew in the equation, Rapid Strike is super dangerous. And like you say, you can map out those prize cards in a really nice way to not be vulnerable to reset stamp and just have game sat on board with a really solid attack.
And I think if you're in a format like we are, we've seen 25%, 1/4 of the field here is Urshifu, the Rapid Strike. So I think you've got to play Mew. And I think every player in this tournament who isn't playing Mew, who didn't put one in their deck list, is at a disadvantage because that would have given an extra turn, which could have ended up being the win there. Mew is going to low-key be one of the most important cards for players in this tournament if these Rapid Strike decks progress through the bracket. If they don't, it's not an issue. But if they do, it's pretty big.
Yeah, and Jack is really under-teched, if that makes sense. You'd almost expect a Mew to be in the deck. You'd expect a Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team GX to be in a welding deck because it, again, can just be like a huge burst of damage. So, yeah, maybe a few tweaks there would have made his time a little bit easier as we go into this game 3 to see who's going to come out on top. Now, the good news is that Jack lost, and welded decks love going second. They are far more dangerous when they get to weld on turn 1.
They really are. So let's head on over to game 3 then, see how it's going to go. Remember, Jack might be under-teched for this matchup, but did end up taking game 1. But then again, maybe at this stage you're thinking, well, I won game 1, but I only won it with that ridiculous turn 1 play. Is that realistic to expect to happen again? Is promoting Reshiram and Charizard to start the game rather than that Volcanion, which can accelerate energy. So, thinking about it.
Yeah, tempo good. You just want to turn this communication into a Dede change, see a fresh 6, and try and start welder smacking. That's what Jack's saying. The Volcanions are here as a fallback plan, but when they're 1 prize 120 hit point Pokemon and you don't play Mew, it's really, really bad to put these into play. It's just too slow. So instead, Jack's going to say, let's try and ramp energies the old-fashioned way with Welder instead.
And we do see the Mew coming down to block any potential Cramorant plays, which again was something we didn't see from Mike in the previous game, at least not at the perfect time. Oh, and that's why, because a Dedenne, Cramorant's favourite snack, is actually hitting the field here.
Yeah, a few awkward cards hitting that discard pile as Mike has not been able to find an Urshifu V just yet. You really hate to see your Karate Belt go into the discard pile. It's a really great way you can get surprise KOs with that G-Max Rapid Flow. And Mike, still waiting, does have the Quick Ball though, so can go ahead and establish that Urshifu V. Looking for an energy drop as well, but overall, not the worst start for him.
No, not too bad at all. He's got the quick ball there. We imagine that's going to turn into an Urshifu. It'd be a bit weird if he didn't. And, I mean, one of the key numbers in Pokemon for a long time has been 120. A lot of Pokemon, like my boy Excadrill, naturally hit for 120. And now it's almost become doubly important because of Urshifu. So things like Volcanion, we've seen so many of these bigger basic Pokemon in the past have 130, and there's a real question in terms of whether they come through with 120 or 130. But now it's so much more important because that could be an extra easy prize for an Urshifu player. Mike doesn't get an energy drop there. All does get the Quick Ball, and I'm thinking Quick Ball double scoop up there. For Zigzagoon.
I don't know if we're going that route. I think possibly just go for Jirachi into Dedenne. You want to have the most odds for the welder. That's still your bread and butter. You can't expect that Dedenne is going to be enough. You always got to give yourself maximum odds. I like where your head's at, but it's pretty aggressive to go straight for the Zigzagoon because, you know, Mike's already protected around the rope right now.
No, absolutely. And you're right. It would be a silly play, but I don't know. I love these gigantic turn ones. And Jack has teased us. He's shown us the big gigantic turn one. But we saw, and you know, it's a classic example of players adapting. Mike saw that happen in game one, and we've seen a real dedicated push in games 2 and 3, where Mike is going, that is not happening again. There is no way I'm letting that happen again. And it's just, I mean, it might not have been an option game one, might not have been able to, although he discarded a Jirachi GX, if I remember.
Yeah.
So I suppose could have protected, but it's just one of those things. Now the Volcanion does hit the field, and it looks like Jack is gearing up for a potential energy acceleration turn rather than a big attack.
Yeah, I think, so we said in the opening that you really don't want to lean into this too much, but when Mike misses energy drop, you have that leeway to actually Flare Starter instead. So Jack identifying this and saying, yeah, the time is it's a pretty good time for me to get this in while I can, rather than go digging with Dedenne with a chance to whiff and then I'm not doing much. Alternatively, with this Cherish Ball pickup, he could have gone Cherish Ball for Dedenne GX and then communicationed in the Volcanion and turn that into a Zigzagoon. Then you Zigzagoon ping the active, attach and Dedenne change and hope to weld for 1. But here, it looks like he's committing to the Flare Starter instead. Could still weld to the active and take a 1 prize knockout with the Volcanion even. But no welders in sight.
No, the lack of welder does make it a lot more difficult to pull off the welder plays. Does look like it's just going to be some energy acceleration, which isn't too bad. You feel, like you say, you feel so much better about this with Mike missing the energy drop. We've still got a potential 150 to get a KO on the Volcanion. But we're not going to, for instance, see a double KO on the Volcanion and Jirachi, which would have been an issue. Incidentally, a KO on the Jirachi would have opened the door, potentially, for a Rapid Strike Energy Karate Belt double KO. So that is something we do need to be thinking. The combination of Karate Belt and Rapid Strike Energy is a really powerful one, but I'm now looking at the deck list. Mike only plays one Karate Belt, and it's already hit the discard.
And more resources hitting the discard pile with a big Professor's Research there. That's his reset stamp gone. That's always something you can use in the latter stages of the game to protect against, especially Welder decks, which rely on only drawing a +3 from Welder, which is in itself a situational draw card. But it looks like he's finally found himself a VMAX. Can go ahead, if he's able to find the attachment and a switch out and initiate a prize race here with an early Gale Thrust. You love taking 1 prize because then your map becomes the same as last game. Try and Gale Thrust into a G-Max Rapid Flow onto Dedenne in the active and Reshizard on the bench. When there's no Mew in the equation, it's a really easy route for him.
I mean, it's 4 attacks, and then, or is it 3 attacks, sorry? Because you can't, 3 attacks, and then that's it. And that's literally 6 prizes to win the game. And I think Mike saw how well it worked out in game 2, and it really was kind of unstoppable. Jack is really struggling to get the big KOs because there's no Blacephalon there. And and there's no Mewtwo. Those big KO potentials just aren't there like they are in some of these other welder decks. And I think you're right. I think Mike has basically got to be thinking, yeah, same as last game.
Stellar Wish is going to hit an escape rope. That could even be better for Mike, actually, in this situation. You'd much prefer to deal with a Jirachi to deny Jack from Stellar Wishing. And if Jack chooses any of the other targets, that's also just additional prize cards and also helps your map. So the rope could be well timed here if we are going to see a Gale Thrust this turn.
Do you still need an energy? You got to imagine there's like 7 cards in hand, but haven't actually seen the energy on the Urshifu yet. So I still need that. And these Urshifu, they're very consistent decks. You know, 1 energy on a V max. It's not a lot to ask for. We do see a Quick Ball getting a backup Urshifu V here, so bring me the energy.
Yeah, that tells us that he's not having to go digging with Dedennes or Crobats, or he already has those options in hand. Mike is going to go ahead and play the escape rope now. It forces Jack to feed the Jirachi, which is really good for Mike because, you know, Jack was really needing this wish to get out of an awkward hand, and now it's just worse for him.
Yeah, he can wish next turn, but he's got to bench the Jirachi and then switch into it and then find a way to get it out of the active. It's not really the position you want to be in. We do see a Crobat coming down, drawing Mike up to 6 cards in hand, but we've got the Air Balloon on the Mew, we've got the energy on the Urshifu, so we're just going to see a Gale Thrust here, taking the KO on that Jirachi and really just getting ahead in the game at this stage.
Yeah, Mike made a pretty good hedge there. He said, I could Dede change for 6 cards or Crobat for 4, but the downside of me putting another Dedenne in is that the Cramorant can come in. Even with Mew in the equation, it's still something you want to play around. Or potentially he's holding on for pieces for next turn, like Rapid Strike Energies, for example. So just going to draw the 4, does finally find himself the good old attachment, and is going to take the first prize here. So his map, as we keep saying, is really easy now. Dedenne and Reshizard are the only things he wants to be attacking. Jack has switched into the Jirachi that was in hand and has found himself a welder, which is pretty handy.
He has, but where does he go from here? You know, we've got the Reshizard there, so still got to take 6 prizes, but he knows that with the right hand, Mike is on a 2-turn clock to win. It is attack for 150 into the Reshizard, and then do the big attack onto Reshizard on the bench, Dedenne in the active, and that is it. And because we've got Great Catcher in Mike's deck, that's a potential there, so he doesn't necessarily need Boss's Orders 2 turns in a row. So, you know, if Jack attacks here, then actually Mike just needs a Great Catcher to actually finish out the game. Attacking with Reshiram and Charizard almost does a lot of Mike's work for him by having the Pokemon in the active that Mike wants to be attacking. So that's why we got to see the High Heat Blast here for 110.
Yeah, and look how many helpful 1-prize Pokemon is in Jack's hand that are just not usable because Mike is threatening, again, the easy 2 prizes in that regard. That's the stranglehold that the G-Max Rapid Flow can have on archetypes. You just sort of lay it out there and say, I'm going to spread. And looks like Mike does have, wow, here we go, the Boss's Orders Rapid Energy combo. He's going to take the 2-prize knockout and set up Reshiram and Charizard, needing just a Gale Thrust to win the game. Yeah, Mike's in a really, really good position at this point.
I think Mike has absolutely taken a hold over this game, because what does Jack do here? I mean, he's got to attack. He can attack with Volcanion, but he loses to a Great Catcher, bearing in mind that Reshiram and Charizard is a GX, or Lysander, or Boss's Orders Lysander. Or he can attack with the Reshizard, but then he loses to a Fighting Energy.
And that's not a good place to be. There's a lot of outs. Mike's only hit 1 all game. So there's a lot of Fighting Energy rooting around that deck for Mike. We don't see many combat cards in Jack's hand. No reset stamp hit for him. Really doing that G-Max Rapid Flow stranded this Reshiram and Charizard, basically made these 5 energies almost redundant because Jack doesn't want to attack with this. It's too easy for Mike to take a response here.
I mean, he can actually do the big version of the GX attack that hits for 300 and goes through anything, and that will take a KO. But like we say, if that happens, you're basically crossing your fingers and going, I hope you don't have an energy card, because if you do, Mike's got game. It really is as simple as that. And I think you've got to take the KO, but you're not getting a KO with anything else. So I mean, do you hit with Volcanion and try and build over the next couple turns, which doesn't seem like a great idea? Or do you hit with Reshiram and Charizard and literally pin your entire game on your opponent not having an energy card? I think we're going to see a Dedenne searching for the reset stamp, but I think Jack is it's a real uphill struggle is, I suppose, what I'm going for.
Oh, here we go. Last Chance Saloon. Reset Stamp is here. We can just see the Flare Strike KO. Doesn't need to GX. He's holding the GX for potentially later stages. And we are going to see Cherish Ball here. Not going for Oricorio, which could have netted him a few more cards, thinking that I'm going to have this one turn of panic where I use this Reshizard, and then I'll make another one straight after, because you can't leave it in the active too long.
No, I kind of want to see the GX just because we never see the full GX on Reshiram and Charizard. But you're right, it is enough just to get the 230 there. So we do see the free prizes. But now there is another thing we need to remember here. Urshifu VMAX needs to come active. So Mike does need a switching card, although he had the Mew with the air balloon, so maybe
that tells us
have the energy.
Yeah, that tells us he's digging for supporter, right? Oh, just find switch. That's not something he wants. Maybe more wishes coming in. Mike hasn't found the out just yet. He can put down that Jirachi, free retreat back into it, wish one more time, look for research, and then just play the switch that he's picked up. Everyone's wishing for more wishes today. It's never that easy for him.
Now, we do see the Marnie coming. I mean, you've got to imagine there's going to be an energy here. I mean, can Jack really win by his opponent whiffing energy off a reset stamp to free? Oh, does not, unfortunately. Mike gives the game away that he does have the energy. We know, now we see the retreat into the Rapid Strike Urshifu. Gale Frost takes the KO, and Mike takes, in the end, a fairly straightforward 2 games in a row to finish out the series at 2 games to 1.
Yeah, that was pretty convincing stuff for the Rapid Strike archetype. And again, just reinforces that statement that Mew is so important because the prizes are just there on the board for the Urshifu so often. Decks that are so...